everybody. Just by way of introductions, this is Preeti Padmanabhan. I'm the host of 10x Growth Strategies podcast. I'm also a fractional CMO. I work with Emergent Ventures. We are a pre-seed seed stage fund focused on enterprise AI SaaS. And I also help a lot of startups with their growth stories. I've been in 5 different startups the last 10 years. I'll pass it on to Wem for his introduction.
Hi, everyone. Again, Wen, co-founder and CEO of GenSpark.ai. We're a tech company based in Palo Alto. We build AI agents for knowledge workers.
Thank you. I'm Jason Hirsch. I work here at Nixon Peabody. I'm a partner in this office. I lead our AI and emerging technologies practice. I've been doing that for about 18 months. Before that, for 5 years, I was at Facebook and then Meta. I'm leading for most of that time the AI policy team globally, mostly related to the user-generated content AI uses of the company, and was at a law firm for about 10 years before that, doing tech and First Amendment side work, among other areas.
Good evening. Hirsch and Jester, a partner at PwC. I'm 35 years into PwC, and I'm really lived vicariously through entrepreneurs. I'm not a technologist or anything like that. I actually audit companies as my day job, but I also lead our emerging company solutions practice. We measure ourselves a lot by the companies we work with and eventually get into the capital markets, public capital markets. Companies raising or top tier companies raising, into the 100 millions of billions a year. 80% of deals were on one side or the other. You're an advisor or the auditors or companies out there. So huge practice for us. And again, we love to vicariously work with and observe what happens when you have entrepreneurs just do wonderful things. So excited to be here.
Thank you. So today's topic is Agentic AI, what's hot, what's not. So let's start with what's hot. And when actually got us started on that field, so about a future of work, right? Would love to hear your perspective on some of the key hot use cases and also your perspective on future work.
For sure. Thank you, Preeti. Can you guys hear me? All good? Yeah, I mean, from a use case standpoint, we're seeing it across the board. So since our launch, initially it was really all individuals, prosumers. You guys probably heard this word. So I'll share a few stories. I met this young man, Matthew. He's in Michigan. Graduated college and wanted to start his own company one day, but doesn't have the capital today. So he decided to build websites for restaurants and local businesses. Before he would hire developers offshore and pay them a few $1,000s, he would charge his clients about $5,000-$6,000 a pop. Now he just pays GenSpark $25, and then he pockets up all the margin. So that's how you take advantage of AI, because the future is now. So people who are living in the future today, they take advantage of the latest, greatest, AI technology like GenSpark Super Agent and really just turn it into money. Another gentleman I met at this conference in Nashville 2 weeks ago, his name is Sean Andrews. He's a U.S. Air Force turned fractional CFO. He said, he jumped at me at the conference. I had no clue who he was. He's like, "Hey, Wen, are you from GenSpark?" I'm like, "Yeah." He said, I recommend GenSpark to anybody I know. I'm like, "Who are you? Wait, and what do you do?" He's like, "Yeah, I'm a fractional CFO. I constantly bid on deals, against these big shops, and I always lose. But then, because they have a lot of associates in their, firm, and now I have GenSpark. I just let GenSpark do all the research, built my presentation, get the financial models constructed, and I win deals against them." I'm like, "Yeah, of course. That's why you pay, to the AI tools, because it works for you, right?" So yeah, I mean, it's real. It's here. And by June, July timeframe, we started to get a lot of the corporate inbound increase. Basically, individuals use AI to essentially save time on their daily work. Like before, you have to when you build a slide, you have to build a story yourself. You have to do the visuals yourself. Now you just tell GenSpark Super Agent, "Hey, research this topic. Build a 10-page slide deck." Like as a founder, how many founders in the audience? Nice. Yeah, building pitch decks is like a daily practice, right? Like, you could just tell GenSpark AI, "Hey, build me a pitch deck, Sequoia business plan template, make it so that Vinod Khosla will love it. Dark background, clean design, and minimum text." And then boom, in 5 minutes, it'll just lay out all the it'll first do research, probably call on OpenAI reasoning models to build a work plan, and then it'll just cross out all the to-do items, and then it'll write code in HTML that is probably calling on Claude models to write code, and then it'll just render the slides, and then at the end you have a production level presentation. You don't have to spend time to get stuff started from zero, right? So a lot of these cases basically help the people to see, you know what, this works, I'm willing to pay. And why? There's this balance. A lot of times we struggle, like, do I spend time to go back and forth with AI, or do I just do this myself? So the key thing is, if there is a AI platform that gives you that 90% there kind of quality, obviously it's simple decision, right? So that's what we strive for. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. From your vantage point, Christian, because you're looking at multiple different companies, are there some use cases you'd like to call out?
From a use case perspective, I'll come from, I like to use our firm sometimes as an example because we do a million different things. I very can't even grasp a lot of the ways our business works across our different consulting practice, etc. But when we think about entrepreneurs and the businesses you're building, if you think about it, whether native applications, a firm like ours, and what I see in our client base, what I hear from boards, the more sophisticated use cases that are out there where you really need the precision, the ability to have very unique characteristics, actually get an edge on the market so that your tools and your models can do things that others can't do. Huge opportunity. Something PwC spends a lot of time building platforms and looking to build platforms that actually change our business. We are in the middle of thinking about, and this, you kind of rack our brains over what does that mean for our workforce, right? Globally, we're almost 400,000 people. And so if you can imagine how much you're saying, okay, how much am I going to build? What does that mean for my workforce? How do I think it came up earlier? How do we pivot a workforce into really, to use more of this than just the keyboard all the time and things like that as far as what we're doing. And so we see that not only what we're doing, but we're seeing and helping to our companies around the world and big ones think about those same things. We're also an organization, though, and you think about opportunities that use the most basic off the shelf when we look at some of our communication tools and things that get embedded into Windows and other things that I imagine everybody can avail themselves to, and then kind of everything in between. And so we're an open AI shop. So when we look at use cases, we're saying, hey, we have certain aspects of our business that we really need to be able to take a ChatGPT, for example, and then create our own instance because we need to have security, right? We're big on thinking about how governance and how you actually get real clean, sanitized data into models that we can actually use and rely on to provide our services. So we have our own instances, and then it gets indexed into the technical things that we need and might be instances that are unique to our business. And so what's so interesting here is you can just see how many ways just a firm like PwC at the enterprise level is dealing with enterprise solutions all the way down to we're a big acquirer of individual shops, whether there's acquirers or thinking about specific tools and things that we can complement what we're doing. And so I'd not seen my career again starting in the 90s, right? This sort of prolific way technology is affecting everything we're doing. When I'm out thinking about what we're doing with our clients, and this is both my own experience with my client base, but also will be anecdotally kind of, we're in the boardrooms across the world with companies saying, what's happening out there, what we can see is boards and their management teams are struggling with how do I actually use and get the communication right of how am I going to actually affect my business. And it feels like there's a little bit of an arms race, right? If you're not saying something AI in your business pitch or somewhere, right, you're not in the game. But actually how that's translating into real value, into real solutions, and what level of the stack you're playing at and how much is it, hey, I can get this off the shelf and keep up here and differentiate with more estimation here. It seems like it's a wild west to me, and I imagine a group like this taking advantage of it. It's I've never seen anything like that before. AI, and I think somebody mentioned, hey, what else? Is everything else not there? And the other place I see it is hard technologies, taking right industrial products, going into space, doing things, whether it's autonomous vehicles, whatever. Hard technologies are hard because getting the visual world and the physical world to work together. I've seen the most failures in my experience of my clients. Our clients, some of them were spectacular successes. Some they try it doesn't work out. The whole infrastructure of the physical world coming together and AI playing there as well. A huge opportunity that those two areas we could see, or we get the whole market, and those things are just crazy often with super fast.
Absolutely. I think you addressed a very important point there, Christian, this because at least what I'm hearing from an investor side is also like this two types of success. Like one is the solutions, AI solution that going after hard problems, because there's a question on industry, right? And I hear a lot of entrepreneurs that come and talk to me about ideas on like, I want to really solve this manufacturing problem in this automotive industry. And they go and make that happen. That's one type. And the other type is all these agentic AI founders. There are thousands of agentic AI startups that are coming up. And for them, the ones that actually have the escape velocity, they easily can get to 10 million in 10 months with 10 people. And those who are like maybe super escape velocity, maybe you've gone to the next nebula or something like that, and you're hitting 50 million in like 6 months, right? So that's the level of success that ones that actually succeed. With that being in place, with all this in perspective, Jason would love to hear your thoughts on what are some legal implications, right? We talked about security and governance for Christian. Tell us a little bit of color on as people are innovating in AI, what should they be thinking of?
Sure. I think in some ways, Christian hit on a lot of the issues that are creating the legal waves. There's a huge rush to incorporate AI as quickly as possible amongst legacy companies that haven't traditionally been tech companies. And sometimes that pressure from the board down creates risks that they wouldn't otherwise be taking or may not otherwise understand. And then on the founder side and the young company side, there seems to be a huge amount of pressure, implicit or explicit, from the funding community to say, whatever your company may be, let's find a way to talk about it like an AI company, because otherwise the money will be hard to come by. And so in all of those situations of sort of, is this a square peg in a round hole? Are we moving more quickly than we might otherwise move? There's lots of legal hurdles that can be difficult to surmount. And if you're not pausing and taking the time to look at them, that can lead to issues. And on the flip side, the sort of everyone wants to, I think Christian was saying it, companies are all eager to talk about how they're using AI, irrespective of how much they may actually be using it, especially non-tech companies. And that's not lost on state governments or the federal government. And so there's a huge amount of interest in overselling, sometimes called AI whitewashing. Are you promising of an amount of AI usage that isn't really commensurate with how much you're using AI? Or are you talking about the risks related to AI in your company in a way that well understates the amount of risk, because it doesn't talk about the riskiest AI use cases, only the most glamorous AI use cases? And so within all of that, the boxes that you have to check to sort of avoid legal risk are not dissimilar. It's privacy, it's cybersecurity, it's bias, it's not overstating on things like accuracy. You can query and create a PowerPoint deck in 5 minutes, but the question becomes, does that PowerPoint deck include customer data? Do you have customer permission to include the data? The risk can come from a million places. And so it's really about pausing in the rush to get the things done and thinking about kind of the same baseline set of issues, but at each step of the process.
Yeah, and thank you for breaking that down for us. I think a year ago when we started in this whole journey or so, like little over a year ago, like there was so many other issues that were coming up, hallucination, other things. Now, I think they've come a long way since then to have defined all of those things, right? For sure. So we talked a little bit about what's hot. Let's talk a little bit about the differentiation and building that technical depth, right? So when, you have been a successful founder, tell us a little bit about how did you differentiate yourself, right? What are some ways by which you suggest companies here, entrepreneurs can actually think about that and bring that technical depth into the solutions?
Thank you for the question, Preeti. So, I mean, when it comes to kind of differentiation, our view is in today's world, there's no moat. It's level playing field for everybody. Everybody could have access to the SOTA models. Everybody could decide to build anything, everything. that you wanted. And when it comes to distribution, back to your earlier description, like things could go really fast because there's internet. People could just sign up, swipe the card, and then boom, they have your service. And if it's good, they're gonna keep paying you. So, and that is available for everybody. In essentially, yeah, essentially everywhere in the world. So for us, what we focus on is one thing: product. We picked knowledge workers as our target audience. We wanted to serve people like you and me to essentially make our lives a lot better. So when it comes to that, the question we ask ourselves every day is, okay, with the greatest, latest models, what can we do to essentially save more time, create better experiences for our target users? May it be founders, investors, bankers, CPAs, consultants. When it comes to taking a meeting, we just built the world's first AI meeting notes on your Apple Watch because all the AI tools, they're good at recording the online meetings, but no one is dealing with the offline meetings. Now with Apple Watch, right, like on your wrists all the time. These days, when I go to a in-person meeting, I'll let the attendees know that, hey, I'm going to record this meeting and I'll just do this. And then 5 minutes after the meeting, I got a full summary. Key takeaways, actionable items, highlights. That's how we kind of think about, essentially the question is, okay, what was completely impossible before, but now with the power of AI, it's absolutely possible. And how do we translate that into the user value, into customers value?
Yeah.
That's how. And there's no, we're not thinking about, okay, what's so and so doing, right? That doesn't help. Like, yeah, everybody's gonna do everything, and yeah, you could really just focus on who you wanted to serve and how you may be able to create value. And yeah.
Absolutely. The last time, I think when I was meeting with Wen, I was wondering what he was doing when you were throwing this. He was actually starting a recording so he can send me the summary. It was quite cool.
Yeah.
I was pretty impressed with that. So let's take a different turn here with respect to business models. And since, as we talked about, some of these AI companies are really hitting escape velocity and growing very fast, Christian, would love to hear your perspective, right? Because you're helping some of these companies get acquired, or there are different ways you're helping them. Tell us a little bit about some of the aspects that founders here have to keep in mind to make sure they are innovating the right pace to get the sustainable business.
Yeah, and a lot goes into that. With founders, right? Brilliant people and entrepreneurs. Again, that's what I love being able to do in my career, even as a service provider, not a technical person from that perspective. Some things I like to think about, and if we say AI, that's sort of the 80-20 rule. We're seeing value in a lot of the energy going in. And if today's conference is about, I do think for founders and in dealing with investors, or let's say it's the M&A environment, the communication, a little bit of the story and how things are really going to work to make that technology work in a customer's environment for them, depending on how you're positioning your product or service. You see that communication being harder than what I've seen in other business models in the past. That might be a little more obvious to explain how we get from A to B, or work in companies' legacy systems. So as an auditor, I'm deep into all the different types of systems, the ERP and the cloud side, the homegrown. What we see a lot of issues are with companies are their ability to actually say, how can I harness that accurately, completely, the interface and the integration? And so if you're in that world and selling to, let's say, enterprises or companies that have some level of existing legacy infrastructure, your ability to sort of communicate, hey, how this is going to work and be effectively digestible into businesses, because what we're seeing is, we can throw different layers of technology or integrate things, but getting the actual value and the byproduct of, hey, what are we doing differently? How is that getting put into business process, the way that people are working? How am I changing the roles and responsibility of people? We talk about governance and security and all these other things. We are seeing a lot of capturing a lot of data from a bunch of disparate systems, but it's coming back and not being organized, at least in an enterprise way, in way it's actionable. So we do see, and we hear it again, you hear at the board level, some starts and stops in ways of saying, hey, how can I wrangle this? Am I really getting the benefits of a lot of, in many cases, investment, whether it's that in the capacity or in the different types of existing solutions and licenses, et cetera, that are out there. And you struggle here. We're a learning organization. We struggle with, again, but you put all these pieces together. And it's a good struggle, but it's one that, as a founder, really succinctly communicating that and being self-aware when you talk about, hey, these are the things that weren't going to be, if you're talking to investors, these are the things that are on the roadmap that we know are challenges and things that we know that we're going to have to face or maybe pivot around or be agile. So it's not about putting all the difficulties and risks out there in a way that makes it too daunting. But I do think there's a lot of credibility in sort of that self-awareness, authenticity that founders say, hey, I know what I'm focused on, but we also know that there's a lot of iteration and other things that are going to happen down the road, where sometimes, that not being authentic in that area, I think, is sometimes a roadblock to investment or confidence. I think it definitely could be an M&A when you're looking to actually merge cultures together, right? You have actually bringing on the people that are going to, integrate in an existing business and make things happen. So, a lot of what we see is in most cases the way founder sets expectations as a good idea, right? So if there is a bump in the road, it's not totally unforeseen, and that communication is really important. As well, we can see a lot of things like surprises people that can things don't go well. If either there's some bad outcomes or the expectation credibility really hurts the ability to continue on the journey with investors.
I think that was a common theme in the prior conversation we saw, right? The investors don't like to get surprised. So very, very important. I'd like to add one more thing from actual differentiation and also business model. What I've seen, especially since I got a chance to work in companies that were doing more licensing followed by SaaS. Now there's a lot more different nuances to it with outcome-based pricing with AI, as well as usage-based pricing. So many different things to think about from a business model perspective, right? And to find the right thing for your customer. With that, I like to now look at what's not hot. And actually, the angle to that we'd like to take is to start with Jason. Would love to get your perspective on what are some of the pitfalls, right? Some things that one needs to be mindful of and what looked really promising 12 months ago, but are having some difficulties and, AI instances that you've seen.
Sure. I think in terms of the pitfalls that are coming back to haunt companies at times, I think the one I see most often is our conversation has probably been focused mostly on if you're going to develop your own AI in some way, shape, or form. But for many companies, and probably for many of you all, there'll be a whole component of leveraging someone else's AI within your company. And there's a lot to think through in terms of the risks embedded in whatever AI system that is from the other company. And so then the question becomes, how do you parse out that risk between your company and the AI developer that's licensing the technology to you? And in that negotiation, there's a lot of weight. And I think for a while, companies were not that concerned about how that would go. And on the AI developer side, most of the companies were acutely aware of the issue that it raised and were careful and negotiated with an intent to land particular terms in a particular way. And I think now companies are starting to realize, as issues have arisen and some of those contracts have been litigated, as the government has come in and said, there have been issues with AI systems, and the government has come in and investigated the deployers of those systems. And the deployer has said, I'm not a technology company, I'm a legacy company from the chemical industry, or I'm an AI company, but not this tool. This is an ambient listening device, and that's, we're a fintech company. And a lot of the state regulators have said, we don't really care. If you're deploying it to customers or internally to your employees, then you're responsible for it. And so there is now a growing awareness that companies need to be careful how to handle the allocation of risks between themselves and the developers from whom they're licensing the AI. And then I think the other thing, which is a constant challenge and was even before the AI world, is, and I'm sure this is true for many of you, for young companies in the AI space in particular, especially like pre-seed round, seed round through around the Series B, you don't have a general counsel. There's a lot to figure out. The world has gotten a lot more complicated than it used to be, and the number of legal issues that are arising is greater and at an earlier and earlier stage. And also, money is inevitably tight. And so trying to figure out how to navigate those things as a founder, how often do I need to go to outside counsel? When do I need a general counsel? The people that you're sometimes going to for advice, even who did it 5 or 10 years ago, it was a very different world in how much advice they needed and how early they needed it. And so being a founder and trying to navigate those issues has also been a challenge at times, because it's creating a whole new paradigm, and there's not a lot of examples to look to as you create it.
Yeah, fantastic. And also the speed, right?
Yes,
study
for sure.
faster. Yes. So there was a question earlier about where are the investments being made. And just this morning, I saw an article that 50%, about 200 billion of the investment dollars are going to AI companies, right? So there's a lot being invested in this area. And 5 areas that we saw in study that we were going to see investments in. One was persistent memory, AI voice, seamless communication, AI security, and open source AI. Very interesting areas. I know when you're curious about open source AI, I would love your perspective on that as an area of or growth and the future for 2026.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we as a company, we use a lot of open source models. So our technology architecture goes 3 layers. So in the bottom layer is really 30 plus models. That goes with the closed source models from OpenAI, from Anthropic, from Google. But we also work with companies like Fowl AI or Scatter AI, Fireworks to leverage their hosting services for access to open source models. Open source models are good because they help our users to really balance the token consumption costs. And our view is the world is only better if in the future it's 1,000 models blooming, is that just one company, one model dominating. And that in that case, I'd say argument base are doomed. But yeah, if we could all just anticipate and see, and then really leverage a lot more open source models, I'd say not only from a cost standpoint, but also from kind of model safety standpoint, like issues both Christian and Jason touched on just now. Yeah, it could be a lot better. And for us, when we built our technology, we basically made this strategic decision that it's going to be a mixture of agents. One part of that is obviously to leverage the strength of different models, because they're all really different, right? OpenAI models are better at reasoning. Cloud models are better at coding. Google models are better at artistic stuff like VO3 video generation and so on. And open source models are better at efficiency, cost, so on. But also to the perspective that I mean, you probably all have heard the story of how Windsurf was almost cut off by OpenAI, right? No one wants to be in that position. So yeah, I mean, these are we're recorded. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you want to have a well balanced kind of model portfolio.
Yeah. No, for sure. Very, very important. In fact, some of the things that are being considered also with respect to removing bias and other things also, right? You bring up a very important point, and there's so much work happening also to make that happen. So I know some of you had questions before. We tried to cover a few, and some of them may not be covered. We can actually take a few questions now if anybody wants to shout out, and then the panelists can choose which questions.
Can you tell us to the pivot? GenSpark's pivot? Yeah. Okay, thank you for the question. So actually, the GenSpark Super Agent Suite is the second product we launched. Company was started back in 23, late 23, early 24. The first product we launched was actually a search product. At that time, our vision was, okay, with AI, the future of search is going to be different. Like how human beings access information is no longer, we have to search with keywords, and then essentially we have to browse through every piece of information to decide which piece is, useful to us. We built that product, it's got Spark pages and so on. We basically generated customized knowledge for each user based off your intent, your desire. We ramped to about 5 million users. And then we saw, the kind of dynamics on the market. Obviously, Perplexity was getting a lot of attention but not making money. And it became clear to us that accessing information is no longer there's no going to be barriers to access information. And it's just going to be commoditized. So we basically decided, you know what? Future of search is not going to be about search. It's going to be about steps further, which is not only why do human beings need information besides curiosity, it's really to get the work done, right? So we decided, you know what? Let's go steps further to really get the work done. So in the past, people sell tools to make money. In the future, essentially, when we consume tokens, we're actually paying for work. So we wanted to essentially get the work done for you with real values there. That was kind of, but also at the same time, I would also kind of acknowledge that coming into 25, the model capability, as Pretty pointed out earlier, the hallucination just went down, and a lot of safety features of these models, like tomorrow I'm going to have a panel with the co-founder and Fabric. They care about this sort of stuff a lot. And last summer, I think this was, since last summer, like before, people would do prompt injection, a lot of weird stuff to kind of take over the model and, just hack the LLM. But then a lot of these things were essentially resolved by these large language model companies. The capability of models also, just went up. The ability of reasoning also made all of these things together made agentic AI possible. That's why this year was the agentic year. And we're like, okay, clearly Cursor's doing pretty well from a, code generation perspective. But they're serving like 4 million developers in the country of 30 million worldwide, and there are billions of knowledge workers. We think we can serve more people, with even more stuff. That's why we've been on the streak of releasing a new product every week, essentially, since April. So,
Fantastic. So what signals do you look for when a company comes up on just are they just chasing the hype, or are they actually solving a real AI problem? What signals do you look for when it comes to investing?
So the question is, what signals do you look for when investing in a company to see that it's hype or not?
Solving the real problem.
Solving the problem.
So I'll go to the lens that we see with a client base I work in, including the investor side or from the M&A side. We're underneath looking for what's the durability, what are the unique aspects of a model, a tool, a system, a process, what solutions are being solved. And I think good diligence, right? We talk about, again, most people here being founders, sort of good diligence can tend to get underneath, whether it's the technological side or really what is the customer base, what are the numbers underneath what's going on, can tend to sort that out pretty well, right? Because if technology is purely the secret sauce, good investors or acquirers will put the right kind of mindset around that to kind of get underneath and see, if it's good, especially if it's early stage. But if it is, hey, look, we have these customers, we have this. There's a lot of good ways to get underneath that to really say, hey, how real is it? I do also believe, and again, entrepreneurial authenticity is really important. How you come across in those interactions with stakeholders and how you talk. I think some level of humility in some ways. There's some things that people read in the body language or in just the communication style that really are real, that come through, that probably get glazed over. And especially sometimes I think people become a little bit who they're not in that frenzy to say, I got to beat everybody else out. And it gets to be this hyper race. So I always try to tell my clients when I see that happening, because I can see them doing it on their boards, for example. I'm not always in the investor meetings, but I see them, the boards are the investors. And you can kind of tell when they're revving up and actually kind of getting out over their skis with wanting to get somewhere and say, but dial that back, listen a little more. Some of the founders that we run across that don't realize their full role is getting a little bit myopic because they have to be so vested in what they're doing. It is hard to listen, slow down, and take other points of view and or delegate and get the best out of the team. And so that goes a little bit off your question a little bit, but I think though, if you're not having that happen, again, investors, buyers and stuff get underneath that pretty quickly, and they could see if you're kind of a one-person shop type of thing comes through. And so that's some of the things I see through watching the environment.
I'll just echo one thought on what Christian just said. From our kind of observation, like the flip side of there's no mode is really, when it comes to investors' perspectives, my view is they understand that there is no moat either. And when it comes to how to essentially, decide, do I write a check for this company? Of course, it would be amazing if the founder could say, "Oh, I just have this, private, data set that nobody else has." That's nice, but a lot of times, they understand it's hard to kind of, ass- assess or judge on that as well. So the simplest kind of way to entice investors would obviously be traction. May it be number of users or rather growth, right? Like if the growth is there, but then they would also, I would also understand. They would probably also understand that that is not forever, right? Like back in 22, when it comes to code generation, everybody was talking about Copilot, and then it's Windsurf and then Cursor, and now everybody's talking about Claude Code. So these shifts are happening a lot faster today than before. It was like a couple of years, a couple of months. Now it's like a couple of weeks. Things change, so they understand that as well. But then what's the best thing to rely on? It's really that attraction. But then because these things are so transient or transitory, so what Christian just touched on, like they invest in the right people, the good people. Like, are you authentic? Are you capable? Do you have battle scars? Like all of those things they try to kind of tell through their interactions with you. And to what Christian just said, like you don't have to pretend like you know everything. Yeah, I mean, in the investor meeting, if to be honest, I don't know like for sure like why we had such growth. I just tell them I don't know. Like, yeah, I mean, we're trying to figure that out. Is kind of
Just on that point, it's all that's always been important. I can go back to my career, but the relative importance is bigger today because of how fast things are changing. How the fact that the answers aren't as known, and the future seems more uncertain of where all these things are going to take us. Because you just mentioned maybe if one company dominates to the end of us, right? That wasn't talking about 5, 10, 15, 25 years ago. That was in movies. Right now we're talking about real life. Skynet changes that dynamic pretty heavily when we see what how people are perceived and thought about, because they're really investing more in you and your team. I'd like to think a lot of you will build teams and gangs that really can work together because there's so much to solve and go after. I do think that creates a real powerful investing thesis when you really have a team around you that you can see the work that divide and conquer, and creating a team is much more powerful than an individual when put together the right way, right? Obvious. I think that's hugely powerful. That a lot of other entrepreneurs don't get that benefit because it is a little bit more about them than the team. If you can be always a lot of us, we's, and ours, and everybody sharing in that vision a little bit, that starts to make people comfortable, because you need to build something to last. Because it's not your free. You got to be a pivoter. You self-reflect and move forward, be a real observer, and then act. Things that sound like you're doing, right? But you don't do it all by yourself. Right?
AI writes 80% of our code. That's why we're. But you do have to have the technical chops to essentially make sure the initial architecture and design is scalable, reliable, and you have to have product taste to make sure. I mean, it's a trial and error, right? I mean, starting a company, it's a journey of discovery and exploration. There's no way, like for certain, the first shot is gonna work out. So it's a process. So yeah, just got it. Yeah.
I was just gonna have.
Oh, clear. Yeah.
But the only thing I was going to add from the legal side is, because I do a fair amount of work on the VC side, what probably didn't exist a few years ago, of VCs will come to me and say, we understand how to evaluate the company and all the metrics that we've used for years, but how do we understand the legal risk and whether that affects the valuation? And if it does, how does it affect the valuation? I think the two things to your question that I see most frequently where it becomes an issue is the business model is predicated on something that is going to become a legal problem down the road, and you may not see it now, but it's coming. Like if you're going to be an AI company and the model will be predicated on getting a certain amount of customer data, and therefore the agreements are going to need to contain some sort of license for you to use that customer data. It's not clear whether that will be possible, or maybe it will be possible at the beginning because the pricing is so advantageous. But as you grow, it won't be possible. I met with a potential client maybe 2 months ago in the health tech space that wanted to use identifiable data about patients to build particular kinds of models. And it was clear to me that that company would never go anywhere because under the relevant healthcare regulations, it's just not possible. And so the one other thing I see is, and this is hard when you're a founder, when you're building a company that's sort of running headlong into new and emerging regulation, and that emerging regulation is likely to sort of hit you in a way that is going to change the business model, or make the business model less advantageous. That's the other issue that can arise that requires some work because it's hard to understand that and know about that on the front end.
Yeah. Now I know, Tim, we'll take you as the last question, and folks can ask offline questions. Yes, Tim.
Okay. So given everything you're talking about, these large companies you did sort of get off this work, how do you feel large corporations are in dealing with the emotions and fears of these employees that may or may not have the skills to pivot and face AI in a way that is frankly scary, but necessary? Like, what's your perspective on how the big companies are handling it?
My perspective on that is I've actually seen a lot of investment, and I've been part of it in helping those employees through that challenge. Like, I'm spending a lot of time now on training related work for broad-based employees, Chases, at large companies that are legacy non-tech companies that are incorporating AI, and they want people to understand how to use it correctly and responsibly, how to understand sort of the relevant laws and comply with them. And so some of that is traditional compliance training, but in the AI space. But a lot of it is also just learning to embrace the technology, to use the technology. And a lot of it often has this isn't a no training. This is we want you to use it. We want you to understand how to use it. And we think it's in all of our interests to teach you so that you can go off and use it in the right ways. And I have found that perspective, as opposed to, for years, compliance type trainings were don't do this and don't do this and don't do this. And this is a different approach, and I have found it to be effective for the population that is reticent to use it because they don't understand it, they don't know what to do, they don't know if they're going to go wrong. So that's in my experience.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, very, very similar. I do think it's about upskilling, even pre-AI, go back 5-6 years ago, digital upskilling. So how do we put the right tools in people's hands so that you're actually transforming the way people work, right? People get hired for a reason. And I do think most of the companies out there, knowledge workers, like trying to say, how do I shift and pivot to I can get the right things in people's hands and give them the training, the ideas, and the thoughts of how they're going to use them, because there is a big assimilation and change, right? We talk about business processes moving, people working in different ways, using the tools and the examples you've heard up here, right? And you're using every day. That's just, it's a lot to tackle. But I do think it's a huge push to, to invest in your employee base, because what was happening in the past, right? A lot of the cases, jobs were moving into foreign, into offshoring, and there were still people behind that. That's starting to change a little bit, right? You're, people that you have here on shore, you're saying, hey, how do I reconfigure that to really take advantage of this and make them, empower them to do things that, quite frankly, nobody thought was possible. And that's sort of the exciting thing. That's the uncertainty that we talked about too. What is the art of the possible here? We talked about the markets. I heard the markets are high, right? Aren't the markets high because of the art of what might happen through, taking the benefits of AI at the engine? That's what seems to be fueling why these markets can be where they're at, because a lot of the other uncertainty fundamentals that support for it's all going to be based in that. So you got to invest in your people to take that to the next level. That's the way we see it, in our 300,000 to 400,000 person organization. How I move forward.
Amazing. Thank you.
One last thing I'll add on to that is, let's be honest, capitalism is pure and ruthless.
That is true.
There is clearly going to be a major shift of skills. People who were good at riding horses in old times, there are not many of them today, right? So, but that is not, we have more people today having better lives today. So, there are going to be new things that human beings compete with human beings. We don't really compete with AI. If we say we cannot rely on the big corporations to kind of go through this transition and minimize the suffering or the pain, then I'd say each of us owe it to ourselves to become really, really, really damn good at leveraging the latest AI technologies and tools on the market. It's available for everybody. There's internet. We owe it to ourselves to really get onto that and become really good. And whenever it comes to whatever changes, in front of us, we're the best. That's how I would kind of.
And you think the world will be a better place in that future?
I don't know because
That's fair.
I don't
That's a
know.
fair answer.
Yeah, I mean, we want it to be
Right.
better. All of us, genuinely, from the bottom of our heart, we absolutely want it to be better. But yeah, I mean, we do what we can to,
Great
try-
answer.
Yeah.
Great answer.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a great way to finish this panel. Let's give a big round of Thank you for